While many fine YouTubers have made content pertaining to new players either to help them out or guide them through the game, I decided to do a short series myself focusing on builds that newer players will be able to put together in a reasonably short amount of time. Expect the subjects in this video to apply to a player who has played the game for about a week or so, and has played public matches to rank up gear to 30. Every build you see here is specifically designed to only use 30 mod points or less, and don't require heavy amounts of endo. Because health normally does not regenerate and newer players will not easily be able to gain more, I make sure my vitality is upgraded to the 4th rank, and I also include a 2nd rank redirection for extra shield capacity to prevent health damage if I can. Mag has a good shield capacity but lower health than Excalibur or Volt, so this is necessary. Fast deflection is a good mod to use early on as it makes your shields recharge quicker, gaining more in between fights before you take another hit, but can be swapped out later on when you get better at avoiding attacks. I also will be using Planes of Eidolon mods like this Gladiator Resolve mod, which can be acquired by new players by doing public bounties for Kanzu and Cetus. You will need help for some of them, but this help should be easy to find, and this is a good way to farm extra resources as well. For the starter Mk1 Broaden Assault Rifle I put on a rank 4 serration to boost base damage, a max rank Hellfire mod for heat damage, and the Planes mod Vigilante Armaments for multi-shot, which makes each shot have a 60% chance to shoot another bullet at no ammo cost. Heat damage is effective against Griner health and infested health, and when it procs the status effect enemies will catch fire and be stunned for a short time, which is helpful. The standard Lotto pistol is weak but has a decent critical hit chance. I put on a rank 4 Hornet Strike mod for more base damage, a rank 4 Pistol Gambit for critical chance, and a rank 4 Target Cracker for critical damage, with an unranked Heated Charge mod for a bit of heat damage. While not great as a critical weapon, it's accurate, so headshots are worth it with this build, doing over 5 times damage on a crit. This also synergizes with Mag and Volt, which I will show later. The Heat Sword is not a starter weapon but can be acquired by typing in Heat Sword in all caps in the market promo code area, immediately available to players, and it's a direct upgrade to both starter weapons for various reasons. Slam attacks set enemies on fire, which stuns them for a moment, letting you whack them with the sword as they are unable to fight back for a short time. I add a max rank Pressure Point for base damage, max rank Fury for attack speed, and a max rank Molten Impact and unranked North Wind to make blast damage. Blast damage is a utility damage type, and with 20% status on each swing it will proc often, knocking down units around you, which lets you deal high damage finishers to them. The Taxon is a Sentinel ally that is acquired early on, gaining the blueprint for its construction by doing the Venus Junction on Earth. While any of these mods can work, the most important ones for you as a new player will be Guardian, which will instantly recharge your shields every so often when they get low, and Vacuum to pick up loot around you in a wide radius, making you wiggle around the map less often. Sentinels are normally never targeted directly by enemies unless you are downed in a mission, however area of effect blasts like rockets or grenades will damage it, always being weaker than you are. The Region mod is useful for this reason, as it will allow it to save itself once from this kind of destruction in a mission. With the basic gear out of the way, let me show you a demonstration on how these weapons perform against level 25 enemies, a level of enemy you won't naturally come across in normal missions until you leave the first few planets. Mag has several abilities that can help her defeat her enemies, such as her first ability, which violently pulls enemies toward her, and this lets you do finishers on them as well if you are fast. When you come across a really tough enemy, her second ability can multiply damage to that target by a lot, and deal damage over time to it and enemies that stray too close. It also explodes after the duration is up, dealing even more damage in a small area of affect. You will notice that I let enemies damage me enough to where my shields go down, and the Guardian mod instantly charges them up to full, which is a lifesaver. I didn't mention what mods to put on his weapon because it deals very little damage, and its main use is constantly freezing enemies with cold procs, slowing them down, which will cut that enemy's DPS by 50%. Here is another demonstration of her synergy, and where your critical and heat boosted weapons can benefit. Her third ability can remove bits of armor or shields from enemies, and against Griner this means your heat damage will deal much more to the enemy, as well as crits being much stronger. The lower the level of the enemy the less armor they have, and with a max rank mag she can fully strip the armor of most Griner at this level, which lets you now deal full damage to them. Heavy units like bombards will take several casts or more to remove armor completely, however just one cast still removes it by 400 without power strength boosts. If you chose Excalibur and it's more likely you did as the game actually encourages him for new players, you don't have the armor stripping powers of mag, however you have more armor, less shield, and more health. The build is otherwise the same, however we will be using him differently than mag. Excalibur gains a 10% speed and damage bonus to swords which marginally boosts the heat sword's effectiveness, so melee will be his strongest advantage. We will be focusing on only his second ability Blind and his fourth ability Exalted Blade, as while his 1 and 3 are useful they either use too much energy or don't provide enough of a benefit for us with these mods. Your higher armor will allow you to take less health damage than mag, and when you get surrounded by enemies casting your second ability will blind enemies who are looking at you, and causes the best part of Excalibur to become clear. Blinded enemies are considered by melee weapons to be unalerted, letting you deal fatal finishers to them, or heavy stealth damage to them if you are unable to stab through them like these Drox. Finishers ignore armor entirely, letting this build here carry you quite far into the game if you are nimble and careful with how you use your abilities. His fourth ability is a toggle, draining energy as long as you have it out but deals massive damage to enemies you hit with the sword and by the energy waves which is good when you become swarmed with lots of enemies. Do not slide attack with this ability however, as it will do a radial blind that drains 25 energy but has terrible range, and you will quickly find your energy gone from just a few slide attacks. While acting as melee weapon you need to train yourself to avoid dealing slide attacks as a result, an unfortunate tip I have to make so you don't waste all of your energy. If you do want to blind enemies cast your 2 instead, as it will have a much bigger range and cost the same amount of energy, letting you deal finishers on them with your Exalted Blade too. Guns are still useful for Excalibur but he will receive no real way to boost them himself. If you chose Volt you may have chosen him for the misleading statement shown to you about him being an alternative to gunplay, when in fact he enhances melee and gunplay pretty well. Volt has more health than mag, the same shields as mag, but has the lowest armor of all 3 starter frames, making damage to health more dangerous. For Volt I recommend a slightly different mod build this time, swapping out Fast Deflection for Augur Message which boosts his duration, another mod acquired in the plains of Eidolon. The bonus of 40% of your energy used will ironically be more useful as a new player than a more experienced one as you gain less shield with more efficiency. This is to increase his second, third, and fourth ability which all benefit from more duration which he will be casting often to boost your weapons. Your most valuable ability will be his third, which puts up a large energy shield that blocks enemy bullets and explosions from hitting you, while letting you fire through it. Even better, the shield will add a bonus 50% electricity damage to weapons fired through it, and any critical hits will be boosted by 200%. If you cast your first ability onto the shield it will electrify it, dealing the base damage of shock to enemies that come into contact with it. Your first ability will chain across enemies and deal decent damage however like Excalibur it's a little situational so I don't recommend using it very often. Your second ability increases yours and nearby allies' movement speed and melee attack speed by 50%, while also boosting reload speed by 17%. This means that you will attack quicker with a melee weapon, which is very handy when you want to deal status quickly. Your fourth ability will deal high damage to a small group of enemies, however it will not last very long and uses 100 of your energy. I only recommend using this when surrounded and almost dead. You can also pick up your shield by pressing the context action when near it, which will shrink it into a sort of riot shield size and force you to use your pistol or melee weapon, and drain extra energy as you move around. This has several benefits to you. The most obvious is being able to walk around and defend yourself from any direction you are aiming, giving yourself some cover as you move to a new location. This is where duration really comes in handy, as your speed ability works in this, which is helpful as holding this shield will slow you down. Another benefit to this is now you can use your crit boosting pistol more effectively, getting close to enemies to shoot them in the head to get those powerful headshots more often. I hope this video helped you in some way as a newer player, and stay tuned for the next video on this subject where I will talk about some upgraded weapons and why you should use them.